Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is our first episode of the Blind Banter podcast. My name is Lorne Neufeld. I'm a guide dog user in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. I have been for about 7 years now. I'm married with a 5-month-old daughter, and we are trying to stay sane during this whole COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm joined with my co-host here, Carlos.
Yeah, hi everyone. So glad to be here. My name is Carlos Garcia. I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but I primarily live in Philadelphia. Well, at least I did before this pandemic. I'm a student at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. I'm studying finance and behavioral economics. I'm also a guide dog user, considerably shorter than Lauren and I've only been using a dog for 2 years. And yeah, I'm here in the United States, Wisconsin, Midwest. Very proud to be from the Midwest. But I'm also really excited to just explore the country. So, anything goes.
Yeah, so we're both kind of new to the whole podcasting slash YouTube slash whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
and we just want to have some fun because we've noticed that there's doesn't seem to be a lot of podcasts or videos out there. We're trying to do is we're trying to help people with vision issues navigate through life and just to have fun while they're at it. And some of the items that we're going to want to talk about, not necessarily this episode, but in the future, because we're hoping to have a couple extra, is finance, guide dogs, advocating for yourself and others, as well as employment. Now, does Carlos want to touch on any of those in particular to kind of tell you what we're planning on doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think financials are really important to me in particular because as a person studying finance, I can tell how important it is to have an education in that, and how much better it can make your life, right? Because it's definitely employment is obviously really, really important, but I think that finance transcends all boundaries. Whereas if you have a job, it's very important. Where if you don't have a job, it's doubly important. And so that's probably one of the ones that's most dear to my heart because that's what I'm kind of made my life's work, and I hope to share it with everyone else here. Guide dogs, I think, is also really important to me and Lauren. We both have dogs, and we both can testify to their change in our lives. I'm sure you can testify a little bit more to that, Lauren.
Yeah, I've had two. Well, I've actually technically had three. My first one, Novato, ended up having to retire after 2 years due to some medical issues, but I was able to get him through the through GDB Guide Dogs for the Blind out of Oregon, and that was really, I guess, opened my eyes to how amazing the creatures are, and just how fantastic of a companion slash aid he really is. It's a whole different way of life. And then I was able to get a shepherd that I had a brief time with, which was not a perfect match, but then we ended up getting another lab, Herbie, through the Seeing Eye, where I actually met Carlos, and that's where we went through our
Excuse me.
schooling. Well, it's been just over a year now, and it's been absolutely fantastic. In regards to the finance stuff, well, Carlos, being humble how he is, he's actually going to Penn or I guess Wharton School of Business, and he's a math wizard. I'm not quite the math wizard, but that's why he'll definitely be leading that episode, and I'll help a little bit more with the guide dogs and the advocating for yourself. That's one thing that I really enjoy doing is advocating for people as well as advocating for myself with both disability inclusion on top of the human rights, I guess, topics that are presented or that kind of present themselves to me for hurdles. I've never backed down from a challenge, and I actually quite enjoy them. So that's one thing that I really am looking forward to talking about. And we're both really into employment as well. We both have a lot of experience, I guess, between us having, well, I guess trying to get employment through different avenues,
Yeah.
being blind or having a disability, and just trying to focus and navigate those waters with the whole COVID thing, but on top of just having a disability in general. And I'm sure Carlos has a little bit more to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a very important part about it before the pandemic, right? Just being able to present yourself properly, and even getting to that stage where you're presenting your resume appropriately. I think there, in the last few years, there's been a lot of expansion of tools to make sure that you're doing that appropriately, and that's really helpful. And we can talk about that further in later episodes. But even right now during the pandemic, I think it's really important to focus on staying strong, right? Because it's very hard for even sighted people, and of course, everyone as blind people knows that we're all, facing an uphill battle here. And so it's really important to stay strong and realize that, you might get rejected 20, 30 times. I mean, I certainly have, right? And you still have to be able to hold your head up and realize that that doesn't define you, that those rejections don't define you, and that, you can go forward. And I think I really want to cover, searching for jobs in a recessionary type environment that we're in now, and of course making the best presentation so that you can prove to the employer that just because you're blind doesn't mean that you're going to be any less qualified than the person that is applying before you, who is not blind. I think, Lorne, you and I really have a strong focus on that, just because, like you said, we have a lot of experience searching for jobs. I think between the two of us, we've probably gotten rejected a fair amount of times for various reasons. Of course, we can't attribute everything to our blindness, but we also can't not attribute it, right? So, it's really important to us, because we think that some of the best things to focus on here is that, it is a battle, right? It is a battle that you have to stay strong, and for a lot of people, myself included, at some points it gets to the point where you go, I just don't want to do this anymore. What's the point? But if you do that, then you might be missing out on the next opportunity that's going to come along, that is going to give you an excellent opportunity to succeed. And what do you think, Lauren?
Yeah, 100%. I would say, well, me alone, I would be, I've applied for about 350 jobs, but especially in a job market that is so crazy right now, it's so competitive, that you have people that are overschooled and overeducated,
Yeah.
and they can't seem to find a proper job, but yet some of the people that are undereducated seems to be getting some of the other jobs, and they're not looking so much, in a lot of cases they're actually looking for more as someone that isn't a go-getter, and that someone is just a very much of a yes person, where they don't want to have you think, or have you, I guess, just figure things out yourself. They want to give you a manual and say, I want you to follow this to a T, and don't deviate from this whatsoever. And I think,
Yeah.
unfortunately, being a free thinker and being that type of person, now I have ADD as well, so I'm always thinking outside of the box. I'm always looking at a another way of doing things, and not, I guess, not conforming per se to what everybody else would be doing that has full vision, or that doesn't have a disability. And that's the problem. Well, some people call it a problem. I call it a fantastic gift, that a lot of blind people
Yeah.
have the ability to think outside of the box, and look at different avenues of approach to certain problems, and look at them at different angles, and say, you know what, why don't we try this, this, and this to get to point A, instead of just always going through the straight path. And that's, I'm sure, with Carlos, because I do have a little bit of vision and Carlos doesn't have any vision, that's really, even from those two different perspectives, it can vary quite differently and extremely drastic.
Yeah, I definitely can agree with that. I think one of the biggest things that you get, especially as your vision starts to decline more and more, is you become a problem solver. Now, between, blind people like ourselves, we don't really think about it that way, right? Whenever we say, like, oh, we're problem solvers, between us, it's just like, what do you mean problem solvers? That's just daily life, right? But in reality, when you present it to people that way and you tell them, like, hey, I can't drive to places, if I need to get from point A to point B, I have to coordinate everything properly. I have to make sure that the bus or the Uber or whatever it is that I'm using to get there is going to be here at this specific time, that I'm going to be ready by this specific time, and that I'm building in enough time so that I can make it on time. All of these different things are things that most people don't have to deal with, because they're just like, oh, I'll just grab my car keys, and if there's any traffic, then that'll be the biggest problem I face. But there isn't a problem about the bus is going to come at 8:25, and if I'm not there at 8:24, I might not get it again until 8:40, right? So I think that's one of the biggest strengths that we have, and one of the things that I have brought up in interviews, right, is I say, you know what, I am blind, and maybe I do, I'm not going to be able to drive for you, but thankfully this isn't a truck driving job, and I think that I can solve problems, and like Lauren said, think outside the box. And it's something that definitely I think we want to focus on a little bit because, like I said, amongst blind people like us, we don't. Whenever we think about it and mentioning that to each other, we're like, "What are you talking about, bro? Like that's just life for everyone." But it is really a thing that I think is very valuable to employers, and it's something that you should mention in interviews. I mean, I don't know what your take is on that, Lauren.
Yeah, I'm always 100% straightforward with them, and I'm completely upfront with them, and just tell them, I'm visually impaired, and one of the saddest parts is that they go, "Oh, okay, thank you very much," and then they move on. And then when you go to try to call them back, and they go, "Well, you're blind." It's like, okay, but all you had to do was ask.
Right, right,
It's extremely simple. Can you do this? Well, yeah, we've got those. Okay, well, that's literally all I needed. Oh, that was it?
right.
You would have found that out if you had just asked the very simple question. But unfortunately, I guess what's simple to us is not so much simple to someone that's hiring, or that's someone that as soon as they hear about a disability, they kind of turn the other way. Because if you tell them you're in a wheelchair, well, okay, we can get you, a certain desk, or we can get you accessibility buttons for the door, or I use a cane. Okay, fantastic, that's fine. But the moment you tell them they're blind, they go, wait, what? So you definitely have that issue trying to explain employment situations to different hiring managers.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and that's why one of the, I used to not really talk about being blind in my interviews or anything like that, right? It's very obvious because I walk in with my dog and I probably don't meet your eye contact, but I try. But yeah, so there's definitely a very noticeable effect, and I used to just it's definitely the elephant in the room, and they're never going to mention it because it's so awkward, right? But for me, like I just always try to brush it under the rug, and I think that whenever I started to actually acknowledge it and say, yeah, I am blind, and can you tell me a little bit more about what the job entails? Because I think it is also important that if they're going to have you do something, if 50-60% of the job is going to be doing something that is visual, then maybe that's not the job for you, right? And even though it's a tight job market, you don't want a job where you're not going to be able to do it, and you're not going to end up getting a good result out of that, and you're not going to be happy in your job because realistically, that's it might bring in a paycheck, but for how long, right? And so you always want to make sure that the job is a good fit as well. Obviously, like you're not going to apply for a truck driving job or something like that, but there are still jobs that may require a little bit more vision, and you need to be able to understand that. And I think that's also a great opportunity to mention, like, you know, okay, what are you going to have me do? Well, we're going to have you working with Excel. Oh, perfect. I've written macros for myself, and I use my screen reader JAWS to do that all the time. And that really alleviates those things, and that can open up the door for more conversations about, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? Right? Because in today's world, I think that a lot of employers are very hesitant to bring it up for fear of offending you or for whatever reason, right? They're not going to bring it up, even though it is the elephant in the room. And for you mentioning it, I think has really, really helped me out. I don't know, Lauren, have you mentioned it in your interviews like straight up like that? I know you and I have talked about this before, but I don't think we've ever specifically focused on this topic.
Yeah, I usually try to explain it to them, and I try to, I guess, quash the elephant right away, as it's going to be absolutely obvious. And realistically, I don't want them wasting my time, and I don't want to waste their time, especially if they're
Yeah,
trying to do a lot of, I guess, interviews. But also, it all really depends on when you catch them, per se. If you're the last one, they may, they may go, okay, that's fine, whatever, goodbye, and they just check themselves out. Or if you catch them right in the morning when they're all kind of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, look, oh, fantastic, tell me a little bit more. And so
yeah,
you really wonder where or what queue you were number of the interviewee of that day. um, so that's one thing that I try to quash instantly, because the moment that you can get rid of that and move on, then they can see you and they don't see your disability. Because
exactly.
it's not, hi, I'm blind. It's, hi, I'm Lorne and I'm visually impaired. It's not, hi, I'm visually impaired and I'm Lorne. So I like to think that you need to see who I am before you need to see my disability.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
know Carlos is very similar to that as well.
Yeah, I feel like, and the topic starts to change when you are blind, but it's not very obvious, right? Like for us, I think, for it's never really a concern about do they know or do they not know because we're walking in with a dog, right? Like there's obviously something different about us. But I think, it definitely changes a little bit when you are not so visibly blind, right? Like you might have vision issues, but you're not carrying a cane or you're not carrying a dog. You can still see well enough for that, but I do think it's still important to acknowledge it because it can be a deal breaker. I find that it can be a deal breaker for some employees or employers, but it's not necessarily because they don't want to hire a blind person, but it's because they have misconceived notions about what that blind person can do. Maybe it's based on someone they've worked with in the past. Maybe it's entirely just something that they've conceived of, like, oh, a blind person can't possibly work with Excel. Like, how would they? It's all just numbers, right? Like, to someone who's never worked with a blind person, that might seem like a logical thought, right? And obviously, I think it's our responsibility as people who are blind to go and quash those doubts and say, like, hey, look, this is how I do it, and this is how this is how it actually works. And that way, when there is a blind person who comes after you, or maybe you get the job, right? Like they know for sure that they're hiring the right person because, as a hiring manager, I think that's also, you need to take their perspective too and go, well, if they're going to hire this person, they need to be absolutely sure that they're going to be able to do the work. And, I think one of the best ways to do it, like I said, because they don't like asking questions, is to just be straight up with it. And that's kind of how I am with everything in my life. Like I'm always very straight up with being blind and what I can and can't do, right? Because there are obviously a lot of things that we can do, but if you said like, hey, I need you to drive me somewhere, I'm like, all right, let's figure it out, right? Like so, and that's a
Yeah,
very
exactly.
simple example, but I think that you always have to be honest with yourself on what you can and can't do, and oftentimes it is that you can do, you just need to do it a different way. And that's kind of my aim in life, and that's kind of the goal that I'm planning on conveying to everyone here with everything it is, right? Whether it be accessing financial information in different formats, or talking about guide dogs or employment or anything that comes up, right? I mean, we'd like any suggestions from you guys that we can talk about. But I think that overall, that's kind of the message that we'd like to spread, is that you can do something, and you really have to take different perspectives on it and be able to achieve whatever it is that you want to be, no matter what arena it is that you're trying to compete in. You comment a little bit more on that, Lauren? Or do you think I covered it pretty well? I'd say I covered
Yeah,
it pretty well.
yeah, I would absolutely say so. But I guess one thing that we did kind of forget to do is what exactly types of I guess aids slash technology slash kind of I guess life hacks do we currently use when we're out and about, when we're going through schooling, like in your case,
Yeah,
going out and about. Now Carlos uses a little bit more techie stuff than I do. I have a fairly smart home, so I use a lot of the Google Home. I have an Alexa. I have smart lights, a smart thermostat, that kind of stuff. But I also use a guide dog. I do use a cane. I use accessibility. I've got Mac everything, so an Apple iPad, an iMac. I do use the magnifier, but those are pretty much the aids that I use. Well, and an iPhone, I guess, as well. And
yeah,
those really seem to be just the only aids I use. But I know Carlos uses a lot more than that.
yeah. Yeah, I know Lauren has a lot of smart equipment. He's not very smart himself, so he needs that. But but anyways, no. In all honesty, though, I use like you said, I use a lot more things. I have JAWS installed on my computer, my PC, and it's just a Dell XPS 13 I bought off the shelf, and I installed JAWS on it. And then I also use an Apple iPhone using VoiceOver. I've used that ever since I've had any kind of phone, and I found it to be the most accessible and the most useful platform, so I've stuck to it. For navigation, I of course use Guide Dog, but I also use a platform called Ira. That was what I was going to mention. I use a platform called Ira, and Ira is an incredible service that essentially gives you live trained agents that they see through your camera, and then they tell you whatever it is they see. So if you're looking for the coffee shop, right, and Google Maps is telling you you're right there, but you don't want to just pull on door handles, especially right now during the pandemic, right? You don't want to just touch all these door handles. Well, you can call Ira and say, hey, I'm looking for XXY coffee shop. Can you help me find it? And they will look around and say, oh yeah, it's right next to you, you know? Maybe it is, or maybe it's a couple feet away. Regardless, they'll help you find it. If you need help with your resume, right? You know, like we were talking about formatting resumes earlier and making sure you're presenting your best self, excuse me, then they will help you format your resume. And right now they have a program where you can get the first 5 minutes of your call for free, but they also have some if you're going to take longer, they also have some plans that you can buy at very affordable prices. But the good thing is that for things that are work related, so resumes, right? Those you get up to 30 minutes for free, no charge per call. So you can literally call 3 times in a day, have them help you with your resume, and no charge. And it also includes things like getting dressed before an interview and making sure that you look good. You can call them and ask them, and they will literally look you over and make sure that you look great. So I found them to be an invaluable resource in traveling, in job hunting, and anything I do. And I probably use it a lot more than Lauren does just because I am totally blind. But it really is an invaluable resource, and I'd recommend you guys to check it out at ira.io, AIRA.io. And yeah, and the thing about IRA too is that they're constantly growing their network of free access locations. So at a lot of airports now, you can just get IRA for free for however long, right? If your trip is going to take an hour and you need to find something, all the way across the airport, they will help you out even if it takes an hour because you're not paying for it. The airport is. So definitely take advantage of it. Definitely download the app, even if you don't want to pay for the premium plans. You will always get notifications when you're in an IRA free access location and you can use it. And yeah, I just find it to be one of the most invaluable resources. And I know that it is available here in the US, and I'm fairly certain it's available in Canada, correct, Lauren?
It is, yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the employment and some of the other ones
Yeah.
in the future. Now, we don't have any sponsorships as of right now. We're not I guess adverse to that situation. So if Ira wants to
Definitely not.
reach
Yeah,
out,
yeah.
let's
Send us out
let's
some free
let's do it.
credits.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take some glasses. I don't have any, so
Right.
I'll definitely try
And
those
we're the
out.
best spokesperson. People trust
That's
us.
right. We both look good and we both speak good, so might as well
Right.
see good too, right?
Speak well, Lauren.
No, it's speak good. Come on. Now, some of the other stuff that we want to do too is one thing that's really near and dear to my heart is being in Canada. It's very hard to find a lot of the disability programs that Canada has to offer, and both the separate provinces. So what we're also going to be doing is I will be doing a other set of podcast/videos talking about both federal as well as each province's disability programs. So my first one's going to be Canada and hopefully Ontario, as that's where I currently am right now. Now, that may take more than 30 minutes, and if that's the case, then I will make it to federal as one and Ontario as one itself. But I do want to make an entire series to cover all the provinces and territories. I may have to put a couple provinces/territories together, as there may not be enough to cover the full half hour. That's kind of what Zoom allows us to do comfortably with editing and everything. So that's kind of why we want to keep it at around the 30-minute mark for every episode. And frankly, I don't know if you guys are like me, but I get pretty bored after a while, and I want to go look at other things. So that's why we're going to try to keep most of our stuff at around the 30-minute mark, maybe a little bit more, a little less, but roughly around that. So that's some of the other things that I want to do. Now, I know that we've spoken to Carlos about that as well, in regards to some of the disability programs or other programs, may it be through colleges or other forms of the U.S. system. Unfortunately, I'm not overly versed in it, so stay tuned for that. And we've got another about 5 minutes or so. So do you know of any programs kind of off the top of your head, Carlos? I know putting you on the spot, that someone can kind of talking in broad terms about, I guess, is there ways to get some free schooling and some free scholarships if you have a disability or visually impaired?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones I was just talking to Lauren before we started the recording about is the Lime Connect network. And yeah, so the Lime network is actually really great because they connect people with disabilities. So it's not blind focused, but it's, you know, focused to people with disabilities, and you connect people with disabilities, particularly students, with large companies that they have partnerships with. So these companies are things like Microsoft, Google, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, all these big companies that you've heard of before, and they will try to get you job opportunities, internship opportunities, whatever it is. I know as a student for me, and I know Penn is a little bit more out of sync in this regard, but we're very pre-professional. And I, of course, have fallen into that trap. So, you know, for us, it's very important to get an internship, and Lime Connect will really, really help you with that. But they will also help you if you are an adult, you know, and not a college student, and looking for jobs in different fields. And you know, I just mentioned a couple of, you know, more tech focused or finance focused companies, but they also have partnerships with Unilever, Sony, so you can really find anything you want on Lime Connect. And I think it's a really great resource. And you can sign up for free at the Lime Network, and you have access to all of their scholarships, all of their job opportunities they post on a regular basis, and they continuously update different resources for people with disabilities. So I'd say that's the one that comes off the top of my head right now. Now, I do plan on focusing a little bit more on, you know, these, like Lauren was saying, focusing on US based programs, particularly probably my strength will be in focusing on programs for students, and
Yep.
younger adults, just because I am a student and a young adult. So I'd probably have a lot more experience there, and I can, you know, really run well versed in that and run everyone through how to use them to the fullest advantage, to make sure that you get a job or an internship or whatever experience that you're looking for, because, you know, it might not be necessarily a job, but it can be something that will lead to a job, right? So, you know, or just resources, just if you're looking for education, maybe you're trying to learn courses, you know, an extra skill like Python. Right now, I'm going through the MIT courseware platform to learn Python. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that and the tricks and hacks for learning Python using these open courseware platforms. So yeah, a lot of exciting things in the works, I think, and I'm really excited to share a lot of this knowledge because, you know, one of the things for me is I know this, and it's great to know things, but it's even better to share it with other people who will also use it. And like I said, guys, if you have any suggestions, right, if you want anything covered, I've probably at least read about it, as one of our friends has put it before. So, you know, I've probably read about it somewhere, and I can probably dig up some information. If not, I've actually probably done it. So, you know, I can definitely help out with anything it is. And if you know, send us some suggestions, Lauren can give you guys more of the information. Um, he can spell better than I can. So he can give you some of the information on how to reach us.
Yeah, so we I guess we have all the social medias. So we have Twitter, which is at BlindBanter. We have Facebook at BlindBanter as well, and on Instagram we are the Real Blind Banter. Those are three of the easiest ways of getting to us social media wise. But if you do have any questions in our particular episode, or if you want to, I guess, give us some more ideas on top of that, you can definitely reach us. We do have our email, which is blindbanter@gmail.com. So that's BlindBanter @gmail.com. For those alphanumeric people, or I guess not an alphanumeric, but the military. It's Bravo Lima India November Delta Bravo Alpha November Tango Echo Romeo @gmail.com. And those are going to be some of the easiest ways to get in touch with us. We also are going to be posting this on YouTube, and eventually we would like to get this into podcast form through iTunes. So I'll be playing through that in the upcoming weeks. But for the most part, all of this will be on the YouTube, which will be probably the way that you found us initially anyways.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm really excited to start this. Really hoping to put out some good content over the next few months, years, however long this goes. Hopefully, it's the long term, right? Because you never have enough. You never can have too much information. I think that's one of the things that I've learned, and I think that Lauren can concur on that as well. And so, you know, I personally am really excited, and I know Lauren's really excited. I'm really glad he brought me on board, and I really hope to hear from you guys because like I said, I'm looking for suggestions. I know we have a lot of great ideas, but we will have even more if you guys share them with us.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. So I want to thank you for, bearing through this with us. And I'm sure that the first couple are not going to be as polished as, the fifth, sixth, and hopefully
Definitely.
more than that. But thank you very much. And from Canada and from the US, have a great night. Have a great day, whatever this catches you. And we look forward to hearing from you. All right. Bye,
Stay
guys.
safe.